Welcome back. You're watching Overdrive. In January this year, Toyota upgraded its Fortuner, which was largely a cosmetic exercise, but it did offer customers a two-wheel drive and an automatic gearbox. Now, the Fortuner has been ruling the roads when it comes to SUVs in India in the high-end price bracket. Some time back, Mahindra picked up Korean car maker SsangYong, also an SUV specialist, and the first product, which is the SsangYong Rexton, has been launched in India. Priced competitively to the Fortuner, we thought it was best to put one against the other. Take a look.
Today I have with me two automatic SUVs, and to be honest, I'm feeling a little inadequate. Why? Because when you look at the chrome behind me, I have nothing to compare to the bling that's on display. But let me introduce the SUVs to you, and just to read the badges of the back. This is the Toyota Fortuner 3.0 D4D automatic two-wheel drive, right? And that is the SsangYong Rexton XVT 2.7 RXV Rexton by Mahindra. I think that covers most of it. But to get on with it, Fortuner, Rexton, let's see how they do. First, let's take a closer look at these two imposing SUVs. The Fortuner is a massive looking vehicle that tends to send smaller cars scurrying for cover. It's got an undeniably dominant presence on the road, and the updated car now wears a more Land Cruiser-esque face with new headlamps, grille and bonnet. The Rexton, on the other hand, is a classically good-looking SUV and is an instant attention magnet. The imposing front end is a result of the chrome grille combined with pulled-back clear lens headlamps that pack both LED parking lamps and projector beams. The tail gets an interestingly shaped wraparound windscreen and LED clusters in the tail lamps. It's a good-looking SUV without too much of the busyness we've seen, for example, in the XUV's design. On the design front then, both of these SUVs definitely warrant a thumbs up. Time now to look inside the cabins. So now within the Fortuner, you can immediately say there's a lot more knee room here. There's good shoulder space, it's a comfortable seat. The two or three crucial differences start with how you put your feet. The Rexton seats are higher, so there's a lot more place for your feet to stretch into and under the driver's seat. But you can't do that in the Fortuner. That having been said, the Rexton uses the AC vents in the middle here, but the Fortuner, like the Innova, uses them in the roof, and I think that's the better way to do it. The air is directly on my face. It's a lot easier to cool a cabin like this when you've been parked out in the sun for a long time. And then comes the question of the third row. The Rexton had a very low third row, this one has a tall third row, but it's evened out because though it's tall, there isn't actually any knee room. That's why there's so much knee room here. So the same thing happens. This time now you're trying to prevent your knees from touching the seat in front. Your foot goes up again, you've no thigh support again, so you're back to square one. Put a family member in there long enough, you've got an enemy. On paper, there's not much in it between the Fortuner and the Rexton. But in comparison, while the Fortuner has the slightly less powerful engine and mated to a 4-speed automatic gearbox, the Rexton gets a 5-speed automatic. But still, I would pick the Fortuner powertrain simply because the Rexton's powertrain has too much slop in it. When you're taking off from a traffic light, for example, you floor the throttle and not much happens. You have to really get on the pedal and it becomes noisy in the process for the car to just get moving. And the last time I checked, it gets noisy at just 2000 RPM. Honestly, I can't think of a real reason for this diesel to get so loud with induction, turbo and wastegate noises. Compared to that, this may not be the best transmission in the world, but it knows what its job is, and that job it does really well. Shifts come quick, it's unobtrusive and it's easy to drive around that car. That's primarily the reason why I think this is the powertrain to pick. The Rexton, it's a very easy car to drive smoothly for a chauffeur because of all the slop in the transmission, because it just removes all the jerkiness of any inputs that your driver, or for that matter, you are making. So in the city, the Rexton will be a nice, smooth, comfortable car to drive, but the transmission, the engine that I would pick is here in the Fortuner. On the economy front too, the Fortuner leaves no room for complaints. It maxes out at 18.3 kilometers per litre and returns an overall figure of 11.8 compared to the Rexton, which returns 3 kilometers per litre less, probably as a result of the lethargic gearbox and full-time all-wheel drive. Despite the Rexton's slow-weighted transmission though, performance is quite brisk. It touches 100 km per hour in just 10.1 seconds and maxes out at 180. What I really like about the Rexton is the ride quality. I think this is a body-on-frame car, and despite that, the way the shudder and the scuttle shake in the body is controlled is really nice. That having been said, as good as the ride quality is, that affects the handling of this car. Get the speeds up high enough and it begins to feel a little unsure of itself. The steering is very light, it's way over servoed, which means parking is easy, changing lanes when you're stuck in traffic is easy. But get out on the highway, and at highway speeds again, when you're changing one lane, the precision with which you're making the steering inputs goes down a little bit. So it's a good trade-off, and these are exactly the things that are the opposite in the Fortuner. The Fortuner does have a bit of scuttle and shake compared to the Rexton, and it's a stiffer ride quality, but that also means that at highway speeds the Fortuner feels surer and you're willing to change lanes more confidently at speed. The Rexton also has spongy brakes with a very long travel in the lever before you can find progressive force. Now the Fortuner isn't the greatest on the brakes either, but there is good initial bite and overall it has the better feeling brakes of these two. In the city then, I would say the Rexton is a good choice, but overall in the broader use cycle, the Fortuner would be the better car. So the Rexton is about 2.5 lakh odd rupees cheaper than the Fortuner, and I think it makes a lot of sense. If you're the sort of customer who's going to sit in the back, be driven by a chauffeur to work, the car is going to be basically an urban creature, it's a comfortable car, you get a lot of equipment for your money, and since the ride quality is soft, it's a really comfortable car. But there is no doubt in my mind that the better automobile here is the Fortuner. It does ride stiffer than the Rexton, and that makes it a little juddery and shuddery over the bumps, but it also makes its handling shine. And if you were to have these cars in your family 10 years down the line, I would bet that the Fortuner would survive it better. And if you were to go out on the resale market, I would bet that this is the car that would get you more money. So the winner is this car, although that one does make a lot of sense.